Well, thank you so much for joining me for a second year, Mr. Ian Mathieson, fabulous editor and very insightful speaker. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back.
And it's a delight to be here with you, Rhiannon.
So, over the past year, what have you found have been the biggest things coming up for you as an editor?
It's been very busy for me the last year,
Yeah.
which of course I don't mind. I think that there's a changing awareness of the value of editing.
Mm,
I think more and more people are seeing that, and I think that publishers are helping that understanding. And I think that there's a greater awareness. I mean, a lot of publishing now is happening as a self-publish, and I think that there's a greater awareness that if you're going to publish something yourself, you are a project manager, not just a writer,
yes, absolutely.
and getting it to a publication standard requires a number of things, which generally is includes editing.
Yes,
Mm.
100%. I think that amongst the self-published community and the indie published community, the two things that you never skimp out on is an editor and a cover designer.
Yeah, the designer is very, very important as well.
Because unfortunately, people do judge a book by its cover.
Despite Shakespeare's warning about it.
Shakespeare can warn us all he wants. When his books were all just fabric and filigree, these days I think we get a very clear indication of the love put into the book by the type of cover that gets put on it as well.
I think there's an increasing awareness that we're our own worst editor.
Oh, tell me what. There are so many things that I will just look for in my writing, and I still miss them. You need a human eye on these things.
Well, indeed, and I have an arrangement with two friends of mine, both of who write stuff, and I scribble sometimes, and we beta read each other's stuff.
Oh,
We
wonderful.
edit and beta read each other's stuff.
Yeah, even
Oh,
editors need editors.
well, we're our own worst editors, I assure you. So those are some of the things. I think that we're also starting to relax a little bit about the fact that the old ironclad rules really no longer apply.
What sort of rules?
I was going through some old books of mine, and a very long time ago when I was at high school, I won the essay prize. And one of the books was a book about writing and editing. And it was, the rules were just so ironclad,
Never break
just
them.
so tight and rigorous. And we acknowledge that language is living lively. We acknowledge that it's moving very, very quickly. And so the balance between the rules and effectiveness is changing from rules as rules
Hmm.
to a lot of the rules are excellent guides to help with clarity and effectiveness. And we have the opportunity to select amongst those. So when I'm approaching an editing task, I'll have a conversation with the writer about some of the practices and conventions that they might have applied that they want to preserve. So some might use a lot of commas, but they want to,
Yeah.
for instance. And some might do painful things about where they place a modifying phrase. They
Uh,
sometimes leave them dangling,
mm-hmm.
and yet that's the way they want to express their stuff.
I
And
think
so,
that's important as well, especially knowing where the authors want to put these things,
mm,
and knowing, like, if the author understands what it does to the reading, that's important.
yeah,
My editor was recently very busy and very she just changed jobs and she's going through a whole bunch of stuff and she had other editing jobs to do before mine, and so I thought I would put my book through that AI program to see if it would edit it, and it did an atrocious job. It did an
indeed, yes,
absolute,
indeed.
like, I can understand how it would edit non-fiction, sort of. But for it to edit fiction, not only did it lose the point of the story, it lost the voice, it lost all of the bits and pieces that go along with it. So the importance of having a human editor is absolutely vital, because a human editor can understand what you want in your story.
And editors are trained to preserve the voice of the writer.
Yes. Yeah.
One of my analogies that I rather like is the role of an editor is analogous to the role of the prisms and lenses in a set of binoculars,
Oh, I like
to
that.
make things clearer and bring them into focus, but not to be perceived.
That is beautiful. Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. And you know what?
Yeah.
You just made me think, when I was at Supernova this last weekend, I was speaking to a whole bunch of other authors, and a lot of the self-published ones and a lot of the people that were budding authors came up to me, and they felt very frightened that an editor would change their story, or that their voice would be removed from the story. And it is so refreshing to hear you put it like that.
Well, thank you. So when I'm starting a job, whether it's a fiction or an academic thesis or a family history, I like to have a chat with the writer and get a feeling for where they come from, what they want, what their intentions are.
Hmm.
But one of the other little subconscious things that I try to do is to get away from the image that I'm sitting here with a very big red pen,
Oh,
just
oh
waiting
my
to spray
gosh.
it around to attack their little baby, you know.
Oh,
So that I know I heard people say to me later in the editing process how much they appreciated that I established a person-to-person relationship.
yeah, yeah. And I think that with human editors as well, you get an understanding of why certain changes are made. You
Mm.
get an explanation for that. Whereas, again, with this AI stuff, with editing, it's just, yeah, it was so surprising to me, and really, it made me quite happy to see that it can't take over the place of an actual editor. Um,
Well, I'm not scared of it at all. I don't. I think that AI has
Excellent.
a lot of valuable things to help us with, but
Yes.
I certainly think that it's not going to replace editors.
No. And if it can't replace editors, it surely can't replace authors.
No. Well, I mean, think about what AI does. It gets a word and then it zips around the whole universe and finds other words that are associated with that word and then bungs it in. So there's nothing creative about that.
No, no, not in the
It's
slightest.
associative. It's associative. Now, because it does a huge scan, it often gets stuff that is not far wide of the mark, but there's no creative element in it at all.
Mm, you
Mm.
are absolutely right. It's really, it is very algorithmic.
Mm-hmm.
It's very process managed. And those processes don't have an ounce of spark in them that a human does.
Yes, exactly. So I don't feel threatened by it.
Beautiful. That's that. It was something that came up a lot while I was at Supernova, and it has been coming up a lot more recently as well. So it's really good to hear that. Um, so what are some of the things that you see most common when you're editing fiction?
Too many words.
Too many words.
Yes. Too many adjectives
Yes. For me, adverbs.
and adverbs.
That's my sticking
Um,
point.
too much telling,
Mm,
not showing.
mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure people know what I'm talking about that. There's no rule about it, but what happens when you read a word? Okay, you see a word, and that is mechanical symbol, so it triggers a thought. Whereas if you can use a combination of words to prompt an image in the reader's mind, they will create their image. So if I say, there's a cup of tea on the table and it's made out of Earl Grey in a blue cup, that tells you something.
Yeah.
Whereas if I say she walked in and saw a cup of tea on the table, you will create your own picture of that.
Yes.
And your cup might be a different size and shape and colour from mine. And the tea used might be very different. But it's
Mm,
one that you've created and you can then run with that image. It doesn't change what the author does or where they're going, but the image is my own, and then I'm involved. So that
absolutely.
element of imagination is something that's wonderful.
I find that I see show don't tell a lot when it comes to emotions.
Mm,
Someone will say that instead of saying someone snapped, they'll say they said angrily. Um,
mm.
so
Yeah,
yeah, I think that having,
gesturing wildly,
yeah, I think that if you put the
stabbing the air
actions,
with their finger.
if you put the actions where you would put the emotional word, you
Mm.
have far more effective writing.
Mostly, I see too much narrative and not enough dialogue
Yep.
in fiction. Well, there you go. Instead of saying, uh, when she walked into the room, there was a cup of tea on the table and a cigarette in the ashtray. You could have, she called out when she walked into the room, look, there's a cigarette on the table. Obviously, somebody's just left.
Mm,
You know, whatever. The dialogue can do a lot more showing than
mm.
narrative quite often.
Hmm. Dialogue is a
Anyway,
lot of fun, and it baffles me that people get quite they stumble over dialogue. I often hear dialogue is a big issue for a lot of different authors.
mm.
Um, are there any tools that you would suggest that would help clean up dialogue or help authors get over that hurdle?
The main thing that I suggest is that to write something and then walk away and come back a week later and read it out loud. Okay.
Yes.
I read uh, a book the other day called "Edit is a Four-Letter Word," and they talked about, look, just get it down and then go back and have a polish. And they used the phrase, just accept that the first draft is going to be a shitty draft.
Yes.
And I think that's good advice. And then leave it if you can for a week, and then we'll go back, and if you look at it again, and particularly if you read it out loud, you will have a lot more insight into it,
Mm,
and you'll be able to do a lot more effective polishing.
absolutely.
Certainly, don't try to polish as you write.
No, there's too many things going on in your head, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
you're skewing the lens with which you write when you're trying
Yeah,
to edit and write at the same time.
absolutely. It's like trying to run and high jump at the same time,
Mm, absolutely.
or something like that.
Yeah, single focusing is nearly a superpower these days. Everyone focused on multitasking for so long, and now going back to a single focus makes things much more powerful when you're going through them.
Well, I've been reading a fair bit of stuff about, well, I read anyway, but um, there's been a fair bit of research done about multitasking now, and it's pretty widely accepted that it reduces effectiveness quite significantly
Yes. Yeah.
compared to sequential processing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Absolutely. I feel like there's less dopamine associated with multitasking too. It's so much more satisfying to get through that one bit and then tick it off,
Mm.
rather than to get halfway through or a third of the way through several pieces.
Yes, exactly. So the festival this year is lining up to be a good one, bigger
Yes.
and better.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. So we'll be at the Logan West Community Centre. And instead of having two tables of speak or two areas or more areas of people doing their talks, we've just got one main area. And then when people aren't there, so when they we'll have the panels in the main area on the main stage, and then we've got a little conference room that we're going to have for our workshop speakers. And I believe you are one of our workshop speakers, aren't you, Ian? I'm pretty sure you're not a, yeah, you just straight up have a talk. I think you're our primary editor for the festival. And
Oh,
so
Lordy, Lord.
you're
I
not.
won't let that go to my head.
Well, the feedback we got from last year from your talk was that not only were you very entertaining, but people got so much out of your talk. And I think there've been a lot of people, a lot of the authors that saw you, that spoke with you at the festival or went and saw your talk, they've been lining up a way to be able to get you to be their editor. So, how can people find you? If someone wants you to edit their books, how do they approach you?
Well, my email address is just my name. It's ian@ianmathesonediting.com.
Beautiful.
Simple as that.
Excellent.
Now, I enjoyed last year because it was more of a conversation,
No,
a
absolutely.
workshopy conversation thing, rather than just me up and preaching. And that level of discussion and backwards and forwards, I found very satisfying.
Mm. And the audience found it satisfying too. They were really, they felt like they got so much out of it. And this year it's going to be even better.
Well, thank you very, very much. I'm looking forward to it, you know that.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be amazing.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I will get this one uploaded. Everyone will see you and be very excited for your talk on the Saturday, which is the 10th of June. The Writers' Festival is on the Friday and the Saturday, and there'll be a lot of students in on the Friday as well. So they will love to pick your brains about all things editing.
All
Uh,
right. We'll see you then.
Excellent. Have a good one, Ian. And make sure you get your tickets. Everyone else watching, get your tickets for the Logan Writers Festival at the loganwritersfestival.com.au. And I will put all of Ian's details in the description below. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers now.